Hello class. Today we're going to be learning how to make the shape project. This demonstration did not record earlier in this morning session because of eCampus issues, so I'm re-recording it now. But this morning I created this positive and negative self-portrait using paper cutout, and I'm going to show you how to do that again now with the same way I did it this morning. So you're going to be creating sketches in your sketchbook for your sketchbook homework, and you're going to be sketching your face. So you can use one of those designs, but one option students like to do is to kind of make a more realistic looking one. So you're welcome to do the abstract, positive, negative, however you would like. But if you did want to make one from a photo, then print like a full page like this, I'm going to show you how to do that now. And it's also the same process you would use to do a more abstract one, but you would just be creating that design instead of working directly from a photograph. So I'm going to move my camera down here. So what you're going to need is, if you're wanting to do something more from a photo that's less abstract, then you're going to need the photo printed about the same size as your black paper, and you can use construction paper or black cardstock, whatever you have around. And then you can use one big piece of the Bristol board, or if you want to mount them separately, you can use two smaller pieces, however you want to do it. So my black paper and my two white pieces of paper are all the same size, or I could use a piece that's double this size for it, because all of our images are going to be created from this black piece of paper that's then going to be separated between the two to make the positive and the negative version. Okay, so what we're going to do first is, you'll also need, by the way, you'll need a softer graphite pencil, preferably one that has a letter B in it. I don't know if my camera will focus on this, but the B has the softer, it's got more of the graphite in it, so it will be softer and it will help you do this faster. You'll need a ballpoint pen, possibly a marker, and then an X-Acto knife or utility blade. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I need to transfer this photo to this black paper to help get a more lifelike representation. Now you could totally draw this, and if you're confident in your drawing skills, go for it. But this is one way that kind of helps students, since this is a more beginning class. So I'm going to turn this over, and before I start doing this part, what we're going to be doing is isolating positive and negative shapes within our face. So that's going to be determined with highlights. And I shared several links on how to take a better photo with like this high contrast of value. And so the way to do that is to put a light on one side of your face in a completely dark room. So maybe a closet or a bathroom that doesn't have any windows. And then take a light. This I put the light underneath me, and it was a flashlight. But you could try putting it on one side of your face, and then you can play with the exposure on your camera and the contrast and create almost to where it's just black and white, really high contrast. So you don't want to see a lot of grays or your whole face flooded with light, or it's going to be a lot harder to do this. Okay, so now is where it gets a little bit tricky, because you are going to have to abstract it some to simplify it. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just take a Sharpie marker, and I'm just going to outline the highlights, okay? Because that's really all I need to trace and cut out for it to really kind of look like me. So I just need to outline these highlights, and that will help me later whenever I'm cutting the pieces. So you may have to decide, like there's kind of a highlight here on my beard, but I'm just going to let that go and kind of simplify this more like this. And then there's kind of a highlight in my beard down here, so I'll kind of trace that out. Then there's this sort of shape here that's more of a highlight on my cheek. Same on this side. I'm just kind of following that general area of highlights. Then under my eye, I see this highlight here. and then one here. Right, and then in the forehead, like right under my eyebrows, there's this kind of highlight here. And then along here. So some of it, you will have to kind of make it up. And you'll just kind of have to draw around and create a shape. And I promise it's going to look like you. Then there's a little highlight here. Here. Okay. So you can see I just basically traced around the areas that were more highlighted. Okay, that's going to help make this a lot easier. Now I'm going to turn my paper over, and I can see where my marker bled through, and so that's really the only places that I really need this pencil, because the pencil is what's going to help us transfer this to the black paper. So I'm going to take my soft graphite pencil, and I'm just going to scribble all over the back as even as I can. And some of you may be too young to know what transfer paper is. The transfer paper was a type of carbon paper that how we used to run our credit cards. They would put this paper underneath your credit card, and then they would make a copy of it, and then I guess they would enter those numbers later somehow. So we used to do this to make copies of things before we were all using computers. And you can still buy it, but it's a little expensive because people don't use it as much anymore. So you can cover the back, depending on how big your face is on the paper. You may have to cover more area with pencil, and mine's kind of picking up some texture from my dirty table, so it's got paint all over it. But you just want to get enough graphite on there because that's what's going to transfer. Okay, so now I'm going to put that on top of my black paper, and I'm going to line up the corner. If you move a lot or you shake, you may want to kind of tape it down so it doesn't move, but I think I'll be okay. So now what I'm going to do is take a ballpoint pen, and I'm going to just trace along these lines that I drew with my marker. Okay, and what that's going to do is that is going to put it's going to transfer that graphite to the black paper, and it will look kind of silver, which will allow me to see it to cut it out. So I'm just tracing around every little area that I outlined, and I know it seems silly, but I promise it's going to end up looking like you, and it'll be a really cool project. And if you post it on social media, you'll probably have friends asking you what app you use to do this, because it does kind of look like one of those photo apps or something when you're done with it. So you can see I'm just outlining every little line, and even if it's not perfect, because our proportions are so uniquely different, it's going to still look like you. Okay, and again, you'll see some of the student examples from the past are kind of abstract, so it's okay to do something more abstract or cartoony if you want. So I don't know if you all can see how well you can see it on the camera, but you'll see really faint silver little lines. So now what I need to do is cut those out. All right. So I'm going to very carefully use my X-Acto knife. I have this self-healing mat underneath mine. If you don't have one of those at home, you can take the back of like your Bristol board pad and put that underneath, so it will help you keep from cutting your tabletop and help glide your blade a little bit more so you don't hurt yourself or anyone around you. Okay, so I've got my self-healing mat, which you can get these. They don't have paint all over when you get them, but they have them usually in like the fabric area of like the craft stores. I'm going to turn this so you can see the lines a little bit better. So now I'm just going to use my utility blade to very carefully cut all of these shapes out. Now don't lose these, don't throw these away. You're going to need every single piece from this black piece of paper because it will be put together. Some will be the positive shapes and some will be the negative shapes, for your design. Okay, so sometimes students just cut and they just start hacking away, and then they're like, I need another piece of black paper. And I'm like, no, both images come from the same piece of paper. That's the whole idea of working with positive and negative shapes. If you like this process, there are a lot of similar processes like this in art, like printmaking and doing screen printing, things like that you might find interesting. So some of the smaller pieces are a little more challenging. I personally like to use an X-Acto knife, but I couldn't find one, so I just found this little utility blade, which works fine. It's just a little harder to control some of the smaller cuts, but if you have the nice X-Acto knife, it's really good at cutting curves. And there's also some links on eCampus for inspiration. Several artists, professional artists, do this for their main gig. Like, this is how they make their art. And they will do paper cutouts on walls as installations. And so you never know. I would have you, if you want to, please watch those videos. There's a really great video over Kara Walker, who does this on a really large scale and has exhibits all over the world with her paper cutouts. And I've been following her work for over 10 years, and it's really been amazing what she's been able to accomplish. And most of her work is paper cutouts. So even when you have like these big kind of complex shapes like this, try not to overcut or tear them, because you do want to try to keep it all together as one piece. It will help you have less to glue if you do so. There's also a few links that I shared on how to take good black and white photos with high contrast, so those may help you as well. But it's pretty simple. Just go in a dark room and put a light on one side of your face, and don't use a flash, and it will work. And if you're in my drawing class, we're going to be doing a drawing like this, not with paper cutouts, but we'll be doing a drawing that kind of has the same high contrast later on this semester. So sometimes the really small pieces are the hardest. The good news is if you lose them, you can always just cut that shape out of another piece of paper. And always try to cut, don't cut towards yourself. I reminded myself when I was just now doing that. So always try to cut away from your hands or in between your hands, and know where your fingers are at all times so you don't hurt yourself. And I have a scar on my finger right here from, I cut the whole tip of my finger off when I was in college from not paying attention and using a utility blade, and it was not fun. And I ruined my project because it got blood on it. But I'm okay. All right, just a couple more shapes. And the better, black and white photo that you have to work with, if you want to do it like this, it's going to make it so much easier. When you have a photo that's just kind of flooded with white, there aren't really any shapes that your face is broken down into. So, I think instead of looking for a photo that you might have, it might be easier to just take another one. But, also just play around with abstracting your face for the sketchbooks, and I think that you may come up with a fun design that way. And I've had some of my favorite ones students have done have been more abstract. So no pressure either way, whatever you want to do. And this is the only paper cutout assignment that we'll do, unless you choose to use it for a project where I let you guys decide later this semester. Okay, so that is all the pieces. Now, since all the areas I cut out of my image were the highlights, that makes it really easy. So now I have my two pieces of paper, and all I really need to do is glue this one down, and you can see there's my face looking creepy and all. All right. Sometimes you'll see some little fuzzy pieces. You can cut those off with your X-Acto knife to clean it up a little bit. But you can see I can glue this down, and it creates the face. Now, the only thing is, here's my negative one. And you can see I just have all these pieces. So how do I get them in the right place? Well, I'm going to show you. So one little trick is to use this as your stencil. And so what I can do is, let's just pretend that this is going to be the negative one. What I can do is then trace all of these little shapes. It doesn't even have to be perfect because it just needs to be, kind of in that area. And then that's going to tell me where to glue those pieces down on this piece of paper. Okay. So now this one can be my negative one, and all I have to do now is just find where all these pieces go, like a puzzle. And let's see. So make sure you have all the pieces before you start gluing around, because sometimes you may have some that look very similar. So here we go. And then I just have to put the tiny ones here. So I haven't used any glue yet. I'm just going to put it over here. But for the glue, I like to use a craft glue. This one you can find, I think your kits may have come with some types of glue, but this little like tacky glue, you can find it at most grocery stores. It works pretty well. You could use a permanent glue stick if you want to, whatever you find that works best for you. But I wouldn't use any like kids washable glues or anything because they're not going to be very permanent. And that's what we need, is something that's going to really hold down. And then you also need to spread the glue out. So I know when we were kids, we would just squirt glue everywhere and make a big mess, right? But we're in college now, so I sometimes will kind of use the tip of the glue and kind of smush it out like a brush, and just make sure that it gets all over. And then I usually will, if I'm doing something super precise, I will actually come in with a paintbrush and make sure the brush is all, the glue is all even. But we want to get it all over to help prevent wrinkling, and we don't want any globs that are going to bunch up. And you have to work pretty fast too, because you also don't want it to dry before you get it flipped over and glued down to the white piece of paper. So I'm putting it on pretty thin and making sure it's spread out. And you can use your finger to kind of spread the glue out too, as long as it's non-toxic and safe for your skin. Then I'm going to just take this, line it up with my corners, and then push it down. So you can see now this one's done. So now I just need to glue down all of these little pieces. And like I said, you may want to take a paintbrush and kind of squirt some glue out so that you can get the glue all over, or use your finger. Just try to keep one hand clean so that when you put the pieces down, you're not getting glue on top of the black paper, because then it will look kind of messy. Okay, so I'm just going to do that with each little piece. If you have bigger hands and it's kind of hard for you to do some of this, you may want to get some tweezers, and you can do the smaller pieces with tweezers and put the glue on, and then um, glue them down that way. So once you get them all down, then if you see any pencil, you can erase that, and what you'll end up with is this. So you'll have like a positive version that looks like the photo, and then you'll have the negative version as well. And you'll see with the examples, sometimes students go and try it with color, and then they use multiple colors and shapes and things. So if you want to do that, you can. You'll see some of the projects students did before on that link. They did several versions, so you're welcome to do more than two. But really, I know we just turned in one project, but this one shouldn't take very long, and it should be a really fast, kind of easy project to do with shape. And remember your sketchbook exercises, you need to do those first, because those will help you prepare for the project. Okay? But I hope this helps, and it'll be something that you can do from home, and I hope you end up liking the project. All right? Have a good rest of your day.